Dr. Amelia Richardson looked at her watch as she walked out of the community center. It was almost 8 in the evening. The legal clinic event had gone well. She had helped 12 families with their legal problems for free. Most of them were worried about losing their homes or dealing with unfair treatment at work. Amelia felt good about the work she did. As a civil rights lawyer, she knew how hard life could be for people who did not have money for expensive lawyers. She had grown up poor herself. Her mother worked 2 jobs just to pay rent. Now, Amelia made sure to give back to her community every month. She walked to her black BMW in the parking lot. The car was 3 years old, but still looked new. Amelia took good care of her things. She had worked hard to afford nice things, and she was proud of what she had built for herself. The drive home should take about 20 minutes. Amelia lived in a quiet neighborhood with tree-lined streets and well-kept houses. She had bought the house 2 years ago after winning a big case against a company that was not paying their workers fairly. As she drove through the city, Amelia thought about her next case. She was representing a young man who said the police had beaten him during an arrest. The case was going to be difficult. Police officers usually protected each other. But Amelia had won cases like this before. She knew how to find the truth. The radio played soft jazz music as she drove. Amelia rolled down her windows to enjoy the cool evening air. The streets were mostly empty except for a few people walking their dogs or sitting on their front steps. She stopped at a red light and checked her phone. Her assistant had sent her some documents for tomorrow's meeting. Amelia quickly looked through them while waiting for the light to change. Everything looked good. The light turned green, and Amelia continued driving. She was only 5 minutes from home when she noticed the police car behind her. At first, she did not think much about it. Police cars were common in the city, but then she realized the police car had been following her for several blocks. It stayed exactly 3 car lengths behind her. When she turned left, it turned left. When she slowed down, it slowed down too. Amelia felt her heart beat a little faster. As a lawyer who worked on police cases, she knew that being followed by police was never a good sign. She made sure to drive exactly at the speed limit. Her hand stayed at 10 and 2 on the steering wheel. She did not want to give the officer any reason to stop her. 2 more blocks passed. The police car was still there. Amelia could see the officer in her rearview mirror. He looked like a white man, probably in his 40s. He wore dark sunglasses even though the sun had already set. Then the red and blue lights started flashing. Amelia took a deep breath. She had been pulled over before, and it never went well. Even though she was a successful lawyer, some police officers only saw her skin color. They treated her like she did not belong in a nice car or a good neighborhood. She pulled over to the side of the road carefully. The police car stopped behind her, its lights still flashing. Amelia turned off her engine and put her hands on the steering wheel where the officer could see them. Before the officer got out of his car, Amelia did something important. She pressed a button on her dashboard that started recording everything. She also opened an app on her phone that would record audio and automatically send it to her law office. These were tools she had learned to use after too many bad experiences with police. The officer took his time getting out of his car. Amelia could see him in her side mirror. He was a big man with a thick neck and a stern face. His uniform looked crisp and new, but his face looked angry even before he started walking toward her car. Officer Jake Morrison had been having a bad month. His supervisor was pressuring him to write more tickets. The department wanted to bring in more money from fines. Jake was behind on his quota, and he needed to catch up quickly. When Jake saw the expensive black car driving through what he thought was the wrong neighborhood, He saw an opportunity. In his mind, a young black woman had no business driving such an expensive car. She was probably a drug dealer or a criminal. At least, that is what he told himself. Jake had been a police officer for 15 years. He had learned early in his career that he could get away with a lot if he was smart about it. Most people did not know their rights. Most people were too scared to fight back. And most people did not have money for good lawyers. Jake walked slowly toward Amelia's car. He put his hand on his gun, even though Amelia had done nothing threatening. This was a habit of his. He liked to make people nervous. Amelia watched the officer approach in her mirror. She recognized the type immediately. This officer was looking for trouble. His body language was aggressive. His face showed no respect or politeness. This was not going to be a normal traffic stop. The officer reached her window and bent down to look inside. His eyes were hidden behind dark sunglasses, but Amelia could feel his stare. He was looking at her car, her clothes, her jewelry. He was making judgments about who she was and whether she belonged here. "License and registration," the officer said. His voice was cold and unfriendly. He did not say please. He did not explain why he had stopped her. "May I ask why you pulled me over, officer?" Amelia asked politely. She kept her voice calm and respectful, even though she felt angry inside. "Just give me your license and registration," Jake repeated. He did not like it when people asked questions. In his experience, guilty people always asked too many questions. Amelia slowly reached for her purse. She moved carefully, so the officer would not think she was reaching for a weapon. "I'm reaching for my purse now," she said out loud. This was another thing she had learned to do. Always announce your movements so police cannot say later that you were acting suspiciously. She pulled out her wallet and registration papers. Her hands were steady, but her heart was beating fast. She had been in situations like this before, but they never got easier. Jake took the documents and looked at them. Dr. Amelia Richardson. The address matched the expensive neighborhood where she was heading. The car was registered in her name. Everything looked legal, which annoyed Jake. He had been hoping to find something wrong. "Step out of the car," Jake said. "Why?" Amelia asked. "What did I do wrong?" Jake's face grew red with anger. He did not like being questioned, especially not by someone like her. "I said step out of the car. Now." Amelia knew she was in trouble. The officer had not told her why she was stopped. He had not found anything wrong with her papers, but he was still trying to escalate the situation. This was exactly the kind of behavior she had seen in the cases she worked on. She had no choice but to get out of the car. But as she did, she made sure her phone was still recording. Whatever happened next, she would have evidence of it. The evening that had started so well was about to become much more complicated. Amelia stepped out of her car slowly. She kept her hands where Officer Morrison could see them at all times. The evening air felt cool on her skin, but she could feel sweat starting to form on her forehead. Her years of experience as a lawyer told her this situation was about to get much worse. "Put your hands on the car," Jake ordered. His voice was getting louder and more aggressive. A few people walking on the sidewalk stopped to watch what was happening. Amelia placed her hands flat on the roof of her BMW. "Officer, I need to know why you stopped me. I was driving the speed limit. I did not break any traffic laws." Jake moved closer to her. He was much taller than Amelia, and he used his size to try to intimidate her. "I smell marijuana coming from your car," he said loudly. "I'm going to search your vehicle." Amelia's heart sank. She knew this was a lie. She had never used drugs in her life. She did not even drink alcohol very often. But she also knew that police officers often claimed to smell drugs when they wanted. To search someone's car without a good reason. "Officer, I do not give you permission to search my car," Amelia said clearly. She spoke loud enough that her phone would record every word. "I have not used any drugs, and there are no drugs in my vehicle." Jake's face grew even redder. Most people did not know they could refuse a search. Most people just said yes, because they were scared. But this woman knew her rights, and that made Jake angry. "I don't need your permission," Jake lied. "If I smell drugs, I can search wherever I want." This was not true, but Jake hoped Amelia did not know the law well enough to argue with him. But Amelia knew the law better than Jake did. "Officer, unless you have a warrant or probable cause, you cannot search my vehicle without my consent. The smell of marijuana alone, especially when no marijuana is present, does not give you probable cause." Jake was getting frustrated. This was not going the way he had planned. Usually people were too scared to argue with him. Usually they just let him do whatever he wanted, but this woman was different. She talked like she knew about the law. "Are you some kind of lawyer or something?" Jake asked with a sneer in his voice. "Yes, I am," Amelia replied calmly. "I'm a civil rights attorney, and I know my constitutional rights." Jake felt a moment of worry, but he pushed it away. He had dealt with lawyers before. Most of them were all talk. Besides, it would be her word against his, and judges usually believed police officers. "I don't care what you are," Jake said. "I'm searching this car." He walked around to the passenger side of Amelia's BMW. Amelia turned to watch him, being careful not to move too quickly. She did not want to give Jake any excuse to say she was being threatening. "Officer, I'm recording this interaction," Amelia said loudly. "You are about to conduct an illegal search of my vehicle." Jake stopped for a moment. He looked around and noticed that several people had stopped to watch. Some of them had their phones out. In today's world, everyone had a camera. Jake realized he needed to be more careful. "Turn around and face the car," Jake ordered Amelia. "And tell everyone to stop recording or I'll arrest them for interfering with police business." Amelia knew this was also a lie. People had the right to record police officers in public, but she did not want the situation to get more dangerous. "Officer, these people have the right to record. You cannot arrest them for exercising their First Amendment rights." Jake was getting angrier by the minute. This woman knew too much about the law. She was making him look bad in front of all these people. He needed to take control of the situation quickly. He walked back to Amelia and got very close to her face. "Listen here," he said in a low, threatening voice. "I've been doing this job for 15 years. I know a drug dealer when I see one. And I know people like you don't belong in cars like this unless you're selling something illegal." Amelia felt a chill run down her spine. There it was, the racism she had been expecting. Jake had just revealed his real reason for stopping her. It had nothing to do with traffic violations or the smell of drugs. It was because she was a young black woman driving an expensive car in a nice neighborhood. "Officer Morrison," Amelia said, reading his name tag clearly for her recording. "What you just said is racist and illegal. You stopped me because of my race, not because I committed any crime." Jake realized he had said too much, but instead of backing down, he decided to double down. "I'll stop whoever I want to stop," he said, "and I'll search whatever I want to search." He walked back to her car and opened the passenger door. Amelia watched helplessly as he began going through her things. He opened her glove compartment and threw papers on the ground. He looked under the seats and felt around the upholstery. "Officer Morrison, you are conducting an illegal search," Amelia said for her recording. "I have clearly stated that I do not consent to this search. You have no warrant, and no probable cause. Jake ignored her. He was looking for anything he could use to arrest her. A parking ticket, an expired registration, anything at all. But Amelia kept her car and her paperwork in perfect order. Everything was current and legal. After 10 minutes of searching, Jake had found nothing. He was getting desperate. His supervisor expected him to bring in more arrests and more fines. He could not go back empty-handed again. That's when Jake made the biggest mistake of his career. He walked back to his police car and opened his trunk. Inside was a small bag of marijuana that had been taken from another arrest months ago. It was supposed to be evidence in a different case, but that case had been dropped. Jake had kept the drugs instead of turning them in properly. Jake looked around to make sure no one could see what he was doing. The people watching were too far away to see into his trunk. He took the small plastic bag and walked back to Amelia's car. Amelia was still standing with her hands on her car roof. She could not see what Jake was doing behind her, but her dashboard camera was still recording everything. The camera had a wide-angle lens that could see all around the car. Jake bent down next to the driver's seat of Amelia's car. He quickly slipped the small bag under the seat where he could find it in a few minutes. He made sure to push it far, enough under that it would look like it had been hidden there for a while. "Well, well, well," Jake said loudly. "Look what we have here." He reached under the seat and pulled out the bag of marijuana. He held it up so everyone could see it. "Found drugs in your car," he announced. "You're under arrest." Amelia turned around and saw the bag in Jake's hand. She felt her blood run, cold. She knew she had never seen that bag before. She knew Jake had planted it, but proving it would be difficult. "That's not mine," Amelia said firmly. "You just planted that evidence." Jake smiled for the first time since the traffic stop began. "That's what they all say," he said. "But I found it in your car, so it's yours." He pulled out his handcuffs and walked toward Amelia. "You're under arrest for possession of marijuana," he said. "You have the right to remain silent." But as Jake started reading Amelia her rights, he had no idea that his entire crime had been recorded. Amelia's dashboard camera had caught everything. His trip to his trunk, his planting of the evidence, everything. Jake thought he was in control. He thought he had won. He had no idea that he had just destroyed his own career and opened himself up to serious criminal charges. As the handcuffs clicked around Amelia's wrists, she remained calm. She knew something Jake did not know. She knew that justice was about to be served, but not in the way Jake expected. The real fight was just beginning. The handcuffs felt cold and tight around Amelia's wrists. Officer Morrison was pushing her toward his police car, probably feeling very proud of himself. He thought he had caught a drug dealer. He thought he would get praised by his supervisor for making an arrest. But Amelia was not panicking. Instead, she was thinking like the lawyer she was. Every illegal thing Jake had done was being recorded. Every lie he had told was captured on video. Every constitutional right he had violated was documented. "Officer Morrison," Amelia said in a clear, calm voice as he pushed her toward his car, "before you put me in that police car, there's something you need to know." Jake laughed. "What's that? You going to tell me you're innocent? That's what they all say." "I am innocent," Amelia replied. "But that's not what I need to tell you. What I need to tell you is who I am and what I do for a living." Jake opened the back door of his police car. "I don't care if you're the Queen of England. You had drugs in your car." "No, I didn't," Amelia said firmly, "and I can prove it. My name is Dr. Amelia Richardson. I'm a civil rights attorney who specializes in police misconduct cases. I've sent dozens of corrupt police officers to prison. Jake's hand froze on the car door. Something in Amelia's voice made him listen more carefully. For the past 20 minutes, Amelia continued, my dashboard camera has been recording everything that happened here. It recorded you searching my car without probable cause. It recorded you going to your trunk. And most importantly, it recorded you planting that bag of drugs under my seat. The color started to drain from Jake's face. He looked back at Amelia's BMW and saw the small camera mounted on her dashboard. The red recording light was still blinking. You're lying, Jake said, but his voice was not as confident as before. I'm not lying, Amelia said. And it's not just the dashboard camera. My phone has been recording audio this entire time. Every racist comment you made, every illegal action you took, it's all been automatically uploaded to my law firm's servers. Jake felt his stomach drop. He looked around at all the people who had been watching the arrest. Many of them still had their phones out, recording everything. Even if you were recording, Jake said desperately, it's your word against mine. I'm a police officer. People believe police officers. Amelia almost smiled. Officer Morrison, let me explain something to you. I've been practicing law for 10 years. In that time, I've won cases against police officers who thought exactly like you do. I've studied every trick corrupt cops use, and planting evidence is one of the oldest tricks in the book. Jake's hands were starting to shake. He was beginning to realize how much trouble he was in. The bag you planted in my car, Amelia continued. Can you tell me exactly how much marijuana is in it? Jake looked at the bag in his hand. He had not checked the weight when he took it from his trunk. It looks like about a gram. And where did that marijuana come from? Amelia asked. From your car, Jake said weakly. No, it didn't. It came from your police car's trunk. I saw you get it. My camera saw you get it. And when that marijuana is tested, it's going to have fingerprints on the bag. Whose fingerprints do you think they're going to find? Jake's mind was racing. He tried to remember if he had touched the bag with his bare hands. He usually wore gloves, but he had been in such a hurry. They're going to find your fingerprints, Amelia answered her own question. And then they're going to ask how your fingerprints got on a bag of drugs that was supposedly hidden in my car. What are you going to tell them? By now, Jake was sweating, heavily. Other police cars were starting to arrive. Someone in the crowd must have called 911 to report the arrest. But instead of feeling relieved to see backup, Jake felt more worried. More witnesses meant more people who could testify about what they had seen. Officer Morrison, Amelia said, do you know what federal charges apply to police officers who plant evidence? Jake shook his head. He was a street cop, not a lawyer. He had never thought about the legal consequences of his actions. Civil rights violations under Section 1983, Amelia explained, evidence tampering, false imprisonment, conspiracy if any other officers help cover this up. These are all federal crimes. That means federal prison time. 2 more police cars had arrived. Officers were getting out and walking toward Jake and Amelia. Jake recognized his sergeant, a tough woman named Maria Santos, who did not tolerate any nonsense from her officers. What's the situation here, Morrison? Sergeant Santos asked as she approached. Jake's mouth opened and closed, but no words came out. He was trying to think of a way to explain what had happened without admitting to planting evidence. Sergeant Santos, Amelia said before Jake could answer. My name is Dr. Amelia Richardson. I'm an attorney with Richardson and Associates. Officer, Morrison stopped me without cause, conducted an illegal search of my vehicle, and then planted evidence to justify an arrest. Sergeant Santos looked at Jake with concern. Morrison, is this true? No, Jake said quickly. I found drugs in her car during a legal search. She's lying. I have video evidence, Amelia said calmly. My dashboard camera recorded the entire incident, including Officer Morrison taking the drugs from his own vehicle and placing them in mine. Sergeant Santos felt her heart sink. She had been a police officer for 20 years. She knew that false accusations against officers were rare, especially when someone claimed to have video evidence. She also knew that Jake Morrison had been the subject of several complaints in recent months. Dr. Richardson, Sergeant Santos said carefully, if you have evidence of misconduct, we need to handle this properly. Are you willing to file a formal complaint? I'm willing to do more than that, Amelia replied. I'm going to file federal charges. What Officer Morrison did tonight is not just a violation of department policy. It's a series of serious crimes. Jake felt panic rising in his chest. Sarge, you can't believe her. She's a criminal. I caught her with drugs. Morrison, stop talking, Sergeant Santos ordered. She had seen enough police officers destroy their careers by saying too much at the wrong time. Dr. Richardson, I'm going to need to see this video evidence. Of course, Amelia said. But first, I need these handcuffs removed. I've been falsely arrested, and continuing to detain me would be another violation of my civil rights. Sergeant Santos looked at the crowd of people watching them. She looked at Jake's sweaty, panicked face. She looked at Amelia's calm, professional demeanor. After 20 years of police work, she knew who was telling the truth. Morrison, remove the handcuffs, she ordered. But Sarge... Jake started to protest. Remove them now, Santos said firmly. With shaking hands, Jake unlocked the handcuffs and freed Amelia's wrists. Amelia rubbed her wrists where the metal had been cutting into her skin. Thank you, Sergeant, Amelia said. Now, would you like to see the video of your officer planting evidence? As they walked toward Amelia's car to review the dashboard camera footage, Jake Morrison felt his 15-year career crashing down around him. He had thought he was dealing with an easy target. Instead, he had chosen the worst possible person to mess with. The woman he had tried to frame was about to destroy his life, and she was going to do it completely legally. Sergeant Santos watched the dashboard camera video in complete silence. Her face grew more serious with each passing minute. She could see everything clearly. Officer Morrison searching the car illegally, going to his trunk, planting the evidence, and then discovering it moments later. Jesus Christ, Morrison, Santos whispered under her breath. In 20 years of police work, she had never seen such obvious evidence of an officer planting drugs. The video was so clear that there could be no doubt about what had happened. Jake stood behind them, sweating and shifting from foot to foot. He kept hoping that somehow the video was not as bad as it seemed. Maybe the camera angle was wrong. Maybe it did not show what he thought it showed. Morrison, you need to see this, Santos said grimly. She turned the camera screen toward him. Jake watched himself commit multiple felonies in high definition. He saw himself take the drugs from his trunk. He saw himself place them under Amelia's seat. He saw himself find them a few minutes later. There was no way to deny what the video showed. That's not... Jake started to say, but the words died in his throat. There was no point in lying anymore. The evidence was right there for everyone to see. Officer Morrison, Amelia said in her calm lawyer voice, you have about 30 seconds to decide how you want to handle this situation. You can cooperate with the investigation and hope for some leniency, or you can keep lying and make things much worse for yourself. Santos looked at the other officers who had arrived on scene. They had all heard what Amelia said, and they were all staring at Jake with disgust and anger. Planting evidence was one of the worst things a police officer could do. It made all of them look bad. "Morrison, give me your badge and gun," Santos ordered. "You're suspended immediately pending investigation." Jake's hands shook as he unclipped his badge from his uniform. His police career was over, and he knew it. But giving up his badge felt like giving up his identity. Being a cop was all he had ever known. "Sergeant Santos," Amelia said, "I need to call the FBI immediately. What Officer Morrison did tonight are federal crimes. This needs to be investigated by federal agents, not just internal affairs." Santos nodded. She knew Amelia was right. When police officers violated people's civil rights, the FBI was supposed to handle the investigation. Local police departments could not always be trusted to investigate their own officers fairly. Amelia pulled out her phone and dialed a number she knew by heart. "Agent Williams, this is Dr. Amelia Richardson. I need to report civil rights violations by a police officer." "Yes. I have video evidence." "No, this happened about an hour ago." "Okay, I'll wait here for your team." She hung up and turned to Santos. "FBI agents are on their way. They want everyone to stay here until they arrive." Jake felt like he was going to be sick. The FBI was coming. This was not just going to be a department matter anymore. This was going to be a federal case with federal prosecutors and federal prison time. "Dr. Richardson," Santos said, "I want to apologize on behalf of the entire department. What Morrison did tonight is not representative of the kind of officers we want on our force." "I appreciate that, Sergeant," Amelia replied. "But I have to tell you, this probably is not the first time Officer Morrison has done something like this. Officers who plant evidence usually do not start with such an elaborate scheme. They work up to it." Santos felt another wave of dread wash over her. If Morrison had been planting evidence in other cases, it meant that innocent people might be sitting in jail right now. It meant that the department might have to review every arrest Morrison had made in recent years. "Do you have any evidence that Morrison has done this before?" Santos asked. "Not yet," Amelia said, "but I'm going to find out. I'm going to review every case he's been involved in for the past 5 years. I'm going to interview every person he's arrested. And I'm going to find out if this is part of a pattern." Jake's face went completely white. He thought about all the times he had bent the rules or exaggerated in his police reports. He thought about all the times he had been a little too aggressive during arrests. He thought about all the times he had let his prejudices affect how he treated people. If Dr. Richardson really did investigate all of his cases, she was going to find a lot of problems. She was going to find cases where he had lied in court. She was going to find cases where he had violated people's rights. She was going to destroy him completely. Within 20 minutes, 3 black FBI cars arrived on the scene. Agent David Williams got out of the first car, followed by 2 other agents and a crime scene technician. Williams was a tall black man, in his 40s, who specialized in civil rights cases. "Dr. Richardson," Agent Williams said as he walked up to them, "I got here as fast as I could. Where's the video?" Amelia showed Agent Williams the dashboard camera footage. She also played the audio recording from her phone, which had captured Jake's racist comments and his lies about smelling marijuana. Agent Williams watched and listened to everything with a grim expression. "This is one of the clearest cases of evidence planting I've ever seen," he said. "Officer Morrison, you are under arrest for violating Dr. Richardson's civil rights under federal law." The FBI agent read Jake his Miranda rights, while other agents began collecting evidence. They took Jake's gun and badge. They photographed the bag of marijuana that he had planted. They interviewed the witnesses who had watched the entire incident. But the investigation was just getting started. "Dr. Richardson," Agent Williams said, "you mentioned that you think this might not be Officer Morrison's first time planting evidence. Can you help us investigate his other cases?" "Absolutely," Amelia replied. "I'll work with you for free. Cases like this are exactly why I became a civil rights lawyer." Over the next several hours, FBI agents and local detectives began reviewing Jake Morrison's arrest records. They found patterns that disturbed them deeply. Jake arrested Black and Hispanic people at much higher rates than white people. He claimed to smell marijuana in almost every traffic stop involving minorities, and many of his arrests happened in nice neighborhoods where minorities were more likely to stand out. By 3 in the morning, the FBI had identified 12 cases from the past 2 years where Jake's behavior seemed suspicious. In every case, he had arrested a minority person for drug possession after claiming to smell marijuana. In every case, the person had claimed the drugs were not theirs. At the time, judges and prosecutors had believed Jake's word over the defendant's word. After all, he was a police officer with 15 years of experience. But now, with video evidence of Jake planting drugs, those cases looked very different. "Dr. Richardson," Agent Williams said as the investigation continued, "I think we're going to need your help with a lot more than just tonight's incident. It looks like Officer Morrison may have been framing people for years." Amelia felt angry and sad at the same time. She was angry that Jake had gotten away with destroying people's lives for so long. But she was also excited that finally there would be justice for his victims. "Agent Williams," she said, "I'll help you with every single case. And I'll represent every victim for free. People like Jake Morrison are the reason why so many people don't trust the police." As Jake Morrison sat in the back of an FBI car in handcuffs, he realized that his life was completely ruined. He had lost his job, his pension, and his freedom. He was going to federal prison, and all because he had chosen to mess with the wrong woman. Dr. Amelia Richardson had not just defended herself. She had uncovered a pattern of corruption that was about to shake the entire police department to its core. 6 months after that terrible night, Jake Morrison sat in a federal courtroom wearing an orange prison jumpsuit instead of a police uniform. His hands were cuffed in front of him, and his face looked much older than his 43 years. The stress of the investigation and the shame of his crimes had taken a heavy toll. Dr. Amelia Richardson sat at the prosecutor's table as a special witness. She had worked closely with the FBI and federal prosecutors to build the strongest possible case against Morrison and 3 other officers who had been involved in the corruption. The courtroom was packed with people. Many of Morrison's victims had come to see justice finally served. Local news reporters filled the back rows, ready to cover what had become one of the biggest police corruption cases in the city's history. Federal prosecutor Janet Chen stood up to address the judge. "Your Honor, the evidence in this case shows a pattern of systematic civil rights violations that went on for years. Officer Morrison and his co-conspirators violated the most basic principles of law enforcement. The investigation had uncovered much more than anyone had expected. After reviewing Morrison's cases, FBI agents found evidence that he had planted drugs on at least 15 different people over 3 years. They also discovered that 3 other officers had helped him by providing false testimony in court. Even worse, the investigation revealed that Morrison had been selling some of the drugs he stole from the evidence locker. He had built a small criminal network while wearing a police badge, using his authority to commit the very crimes he was supposed to prevent. "Dr. Richardson," Prosecutor Chen said, "would you please tell the court about the night of March 15th? Amelia stood up and walked to the witness stand. She had testified in many trials before, but this one felt different. This was personal. This was about justice for herself and for all of Morrison's other victims. On the evening of March 15th, Amelia began, I was driving home from a community legal clinic when Officer Morrison pulled me over without cause. Over the next hour, he violated my constitutional rights in multiple ways and planted drugs in my vehicle. Amelia's testimony was clear and powerful. She explained how Morrison had conducted an illegal search, made racist comments, and then planted evidence. She showed the court the video footage that had captured everything. The defense lawyer tried to argue that Morrison had made honest mistakes, but the evidence was overwhelming. The video showed Morrison's crimes in perfect detail. There was no way to explain away what everyone could see with their own eyes. Officer Morrison, the judge said when it was time for sentencing, you have violated the trust that society places in law enforcement officers. You have damaged the reputation of honest police officers everywhere, and you have destroyed the lives of innocent people who trusted the justice system to protect them. Jake Morrison stood up to face the judge. His lawyer had advised him to show remorse, but Jake still felt more sorry for himself than for his victims. He could not understand how his life had fallen apart so quickly. Your Honor, Morrison said in a shaky voice, I made some mistakes, but I was always trying to fight crime. I was just trying to do my job. Judge Patricia Wilson was not impressed. She had been a federal judge for 15 years, and she had seen many corrupt officials try to justify their crimes. Mr. Morrison, planting evidence is not fighting crime. It is committing crime. You were not doing your job. You were betraying your job. For the charge of civil rights violations, Judge Wilson continued, I sentence you to 8 years in federal prison. For evidence tampering, 4 years to run concurrently. For conspiracy, 3 years to run concurrently. You will also pay restitution to your victims and forfeit your police pension. Morrison collapsed into his chair as the sentence was read. 8 years in federal prison meant his life as he knew it was over. He would be almost 52 when he got out, with no job skills except police work and a felony record that would make him unemployable. But the sentencing was not over. The 3 other officers who had helped Morrison were also sentenced. Officer Brian Kelly got 5 years for perjury and conspiracy. Officer Linda Torres got 4 years for helping to cover up Morrison's crimes. Officer Mark Johnson got 3 years for filing false reports. After the sentencing, Amelia met with some of Morrison's other victims outside the courthouse. There was Marcus Williams, a 24-year-old college student who had spent 6 months in jail because of Morrison's planted drugs. There was Elena Gonzalez, a single mother who had lost her job after being arrested on false charges. There was David Thompson, a military veteran whose life had been destroyed by a drug conviction that was now proven to be fake. Dr. Richardson, Marcus said with tears in his eyes, I can never thank you enough. If you hadn't caught Morrison that night, I would still be in prison for something I didn't do. Elena hugged Amelia tightly. You saved my life, she whispered. You saved all of our lives. The criminal trials were just the beginning. Amelia had also filed civil lawsuits against the police department and the city. The city agreed to pay $15 million to Morrison's victims. More importantly, they agreed to major reforms in the police department. All police officers would now be required to wear body cameras at all times. The department would hire an independent monitor to investigate complaints against officers. New training programs would teach officers about civil rights and constitutional law, and officers with histories of complaints would be closely supervised. Amelia, used her share of the settlement money to start a new organization called the Citizens' Rights Defense Fund. The organization provided free legal help to people who had been abused by police officers. It also trained community members to know their rights and how to document police encounters. "Too many people don't know what their rights are," Amelia explained to a group of reporters. "They don't know they can refuse illegal searches. They don't know they can record police officers. Education is the best defense against police abuse." The case also inspired changes in the state legislature. Lawmakers passed new laws requiring police departments to report officer misconduct to a statewide database. They also made it easier for prosecutors to file charges against corrupt officers. But perhaps the most important change was in the culture of the police department itself. Good officers who had been afraid to speak out against corruption now felt empowered to report misconduct. The department created anonymous tip lines for officers to report problems. And new recruits were taught that protecting bad officers was just as wrong as being a bad officer. 2 years after Morrison's conviction, Amelia received a letter that made her smile. It was from a young police officer named Sarah Martinez, who had just graduated from the police academy. "Dr. Richardson," the letter said, "I wanted you to know that your case was discussed extensively during our training. Our instructors used it as an example of why we must always follow the law and respect people's rights, no matter who they are or what they look like. Because of your courage, I think my generation of officers will be better than the ones who came before us." Amelia kept that letter in her office as a reminder of why her work mattered. One night of terror had turned into years of positive change. Morrison's attempt to destroy her life had instead led to justice for dozens of his victims and reforms that would protect thousands more people in the future. Jake Morrison had thought he could get away with his crimes because he wore a badge. He had thought he could frame an innocent woman because she was black and he was a police officer. He had thought the system would automatically believe his word over hers. He had been wrong about everything. Dr. Amelia Richardson had not just defended herself that night. She had defended the Constitution, the rule of law, and the principle that no one is above justice. She had proven that knowledge, courage, and preparation could defeat corruption and prejudice. And she had shown that sometimes picking on the wrong person can lead to exactly the right outcome.